You connect with a consumer by identifying the pain points that they're already feeling and solving the problems that they're already thinking about. I want to take to market leaning on the strengths that people are already perceiving in me. I get to see infinite varieties of how people navigate complex situations and change. And I can tell you, hopefully better than most, what the patterns of successful navigation are.
In today's world, how does a brand break through the noise and become iconic? Join me, Jason Harris, as I speak with the world's leading marketing experts about how they use soul and science to build an iconic brand. Think of it as EQ meeting IQ. So let's lock in and together fast forward our marketing minds on the Soul and Science podcast. Welcome to the Soul and Science podcast. Today, we're going to talk with Jason Feifer, author of Build for Tomorrow and editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. We're going to talk really about the soul and science of kind of future-proofing yourself or your business or your brand. But a lot of Jason's work focuses on that and how, legacy brands and modern leaders can stay frosty and they can pivot and stay ahead. Jason really will help us unpack strategies, maybe some mindset shifts and decisions that you can make to help embrace and adapt to change, which I feel like change has been ramped up even faster than ever. Anyway, welcome to the podcast, Jason.
Well, thank you so much, Jason. It's really a delight to be here.
It's great to have you. All right. I always start with the basics. I love a good origin story. I know you're editor-in-chief, obviously, of Entrepreneur, which you've been, 12, 13 years maybe now.
Not quite that long, but coming up on 10.
Okay, almost a decade.
Yeah.
I added a couple of years for you.
You made me older.
Yep. You host a very successful podcast or two, very successful book, keynote, startup. You've done it all. You're kind of, I think of as a constellation where you don't have one thing that you do, but you kind of do a lot of different things.
Hey, I appreciate that you see that. That was very intentional.
Before we dive into that intentionality, how did you start and what led you to this constellation career that you're at now?
So I started as a community newspaper reporter in Gardner, Massachusetts. My first job was local reporter, Gardner News, circulation 6,000 at the time, which was like 2002. And I was the local reporter covering nothing because nothing is happening in this little town. And I hated it. I have to be honest. I hated it.
Was journalism something you were going for?
Journalism to me was a solution to a problem. And the problem was that I knew I loved to write and I was really bad at every other kind of writing. I tried novel writing. I had tried script writing. I just couldn't figure out how to do it. But I realized that I loved talking to people and that I was pretty good at walking into a room, absorbing information, and then like turning it around and regurgitating it to other people in a useful way. And so I just got into news, even though that wasn't exactly where I wanted to be. And there was an interesting, valuable moment in that first job that set me up for the kind of thing that I do now, which is this constellation as you recognized, which is this. I was there for about a year, this local reporting job. And I was deeply dissatisfied. I was obnoxious. I was obnoxious because I was a young kid and I felt like I should be able to do more and I should be working at these large publications. And nobody would have me because I was just a kid who didn't have any experience. So why would the Washington Post or the New York Times hire me? There was no reason to do that.
Was there something inside you where you were like, I am good enough, I'm smart enough, and I can...
And gosh darn it, people like me.
Yeah. No, not Robert Smalley, but I can work anywhere because I believe in myself. You had this.
Yes.
How did you have, where did that come from?
Did you read this thing, Jason? Dave Eggers, a famous novelist, Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius, et cetera, McSweeney's. Dave Eggers, I'd say maybe year 2000 or so, he was being interviewed by a college newspaper reporter who asked him about selling out, which is a thing that nobody talks about or even is aware of as a concept anymore. But back then, the idea of taking money from somebody instead of just pursuing your art as a unpaid slave to creativity, that was seen as selling out. That was a bad thing. And Dave Eggers had, after an indie publishing career, gotten this major book deal, and a bunch of people accused him of selling out. So this college newspaper reporter asked him about selling out, and I don't know what he said at the time, but then he stewed on it and he wrote this long email that turned into this kind of essay to this reporter that the reporter then published online about how he believes that it is more important to say yes to things than no to things. And that people who accuse others of selling out are people who live in small environments, who are afraid of experiencing the world beyond what they know and are comfortable with, and that chastise others for doing so. And that everything that he says yes to is not necessarily things that are going to be good, but that he wants to live a life of saying yes and not no. Do you remember this essay? Because this had a profound impact on me.
It's vaguely familiar, but I will definitely go back and read it.
Oh, here, as I'm talking, I just pulled up a little passage. I'm going to read it to you. This is from Dave Eggers. The thing is, I really like saying yes. I like new things, projects, plans, getting people together and doing something, trying something, even when it's corny or stupid. I am not good at saying no, and I do not get along with people who say no. When you die, and it really could be this afternoon, under the same bus wheel I'll stick my head under if need be, you will not be happy about having said no. You will be kicking your ass about all the no's you've said. No to that opportunity, or no to that trip to Nova Scotia, or no to that night out, or no to that project, or no to that person who wants to be naked with you, but you worry about what your friends will say. No is for wimps. No is for pussies. No is to live small and embittered, cherishing the opportunities you missed because they might have sent the wrong message. I was changed by that message. I was changed by it.
That's awesome.
So you ask this question, which is, where did this confidence come from? The answer is that I read that in college, and then I tried to march into the world basically saying, I will be able to tackle whatever I put myself up to. I will be a person who says yes. And that was the attitude that I took into that job, that first job, where I just felt like I was going to be able to do bigger things than that. And I didn't have the patience to sit around waiting for it to happen. So I quit because I realized something. And the thing that I realized was that in front of you, Jason Harris, and everyone listening right now, and in front of me at that time and today, there are two sets of opportunities. Opportunity set A, opportunity set B. Opportunity set A is everything that is asked of you. So if you've got a job, you show up, people expect things from you, you are evaluated on whether you do those things. Opportunity set A. Opportunity set B is everything that is available to you that nobody's asking you to do. And I realized at that first job that there was more available to me than showing up at that little tiny newspaper going nowhere. That actually I could just cold email editors at national publications and send them ideas, and surely somebody is going to say yes to me. And then maybe I won't get paid a lot of money at start, but like then I'll be writing for these large publications, and I'll be able to prove myself in a way that just working at this tiny little newspaper and then getting a job at another tiny little newspaper and then getting another job at a maybe slightly larger newspaper, that was just not going to get me there. And so that's what I did. I quit my job. I sat in my bedroom in a dumpy apartment in Holden, Massachusetts, next to a graveyard where I paid $500 a month in rent. And I started cold pitching the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Boston Globe and wherever. And I got a lot of no's and a lot of being ignored. And then one day I got a yes.
And your pitch wasn't hire me for a full-time job. It was,
no.
Here's a story idea I want to write.
Yeah. Because hire me for a full-time job is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. They're not going to do that.
Right.
I mean, look, you're a guy who deeply understands marketing and advertising. Like, you can't go to people and then tell them what you want. Who the hell cares what you want? Doesn't matter. So you have to know what they want. And what I knew was that what they don't want is some inexperienced kid working for them. What they do want are good ideas. Every day an editor shows up and their pain point is, I got space to fill and I need ideas.
Yeah.
And so I just started sending them ideas. Here's an idea, here's an idea. And the first person to ever give me a chance was a editor at the Washington Post. Her name was Susan Morse. I pitched her some health story. She was the health editor, and she replied and she said she'd like to talk about it. And I got on the phone. I was incredibly nervous. I'm pacing around. My mouth is dry, and she asked me a lot of questions about the story that I had pitched and about my own experience, which was limited. And at the end, she said, "Well, look, I'm not ready to say yes, but I'm not ready to say no. So if you want to do some work on this, then do it and let me know what happens." And so I just busted my ass and I called a bazillion people and I sent her a 2,500 word outline for a story that would probably only run at 1,000 words. And she was convinced that I could hustle and make this happen and write for the Washington Post. And she said yes. And that was my first big break.
So your pitch was longer than the actual story?
Considerably so. Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
The point of doing that is to erase any doubt that I will not do everything that she needs me to do. That's what I really was selling.
It was an exhaustive pitch.
Yeah. And the thing that I took away from it was get in people's faces and constantly look for that opportunity set B. Like never, ever be satisfied with the thing that you already have, but just think of the thing that you have as a launching point for what's next. And I've been thinking about that my entire career. So that was really helpful in escaping this first job that I had that I felt was kind of dead endy, but I still do it now. I mean, I got this big job being the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, and I spent maybe the first 9 months of it just focused on Entrepreneur. There was a lot of work to do to kind of rethink the magazine, and the brand was going through a big transition at the time. But then after that, I thought, okay, this has to be one thing that I do because right now, this creates future opportunity. And I'm not going to sit around and wait for me to just only be known by this brand that I don't own and to only be good at running this magazine. Like, this is the moment to say, what else can I do that nobody's asking me to do, but that is available to me? And I'm obsessed with that idea of what's available.
Rewinding a minute, after the Washington Post break, you then got a lot of other breaks and additional stories in other publications. Is that how that worked?
I mean, what I did was that I freelanced for a while and I got a couple big clips, and that got me a job at a regional newspaper in Massachusetts called the Worcester Telegram and Gazette. And then I just kept doing both things at the same time. So then I would work at the paper, but then I was also freelancing in mornings and nights and weekends. And I started to freelance for Boston Magazine. And after about a year or so of doing that, because now I knew the team there, I could see that a senior editor had left, a junior editor was going to move up, and that created a junior opening spot. And so I talked to the editor in chief. I was living in central Massachusetts at the time. I talked to the editor in chief of the big Boston magazine, and he was like, "Look, you're doing great work, but I don't know that you have the experience for this job because you haven't worked in magazines before." And I tried to convince him, but I could tell that he wasn't totally convinced. So I quit my newspaper job and I moved to Boston. And then I told him that I was ready to start working.
Oh my God, dude, ballsy.
Yeah, it was a real financial gamble because it was a lot more expensive to live in Boston than in Central Mass. But that's what I did. I quit my job and I moved to Boston, and I told them that I was ready to start working for Boston Magazine.
And then you got the job?
And I got the job. Yeah.
And then that led to Entrepreneur?
And that led to Men's Health.
The Men's Health. That's right. I forgot about your Men's Health career.
And then I moved to New York for Men's Health. And then that led to Fast Company. And then that led to Maxim, which was a terrible decision.
That's
and
right.
That
you
led
were a senior editor of Fast Company. Then you
Correct.
That's right. You're sort of the original side hustler. Like, you've always been moonlighting and doing more than one thing throughout your career.
Yeah. To me, it's just, I don't know how to do it any other way. This is a little bit of a tangent off of here, but to get philosophical for a second, I've been thinking a lot about why I or anybody do the things that we do and choose the projects that we choose. And I came to this realization for myself, at least, which is that I don't think doing any of this is about any of this. I think that actually it is about creating and maintaining what I call a state of being. And the state of being is the environment and actions that you want to be experiencing every day. Like, just what is the daily experience that you want to be having? And the choices that we make are essentially crafting or maintaining that. And I thought, well, what is that for me? Like, when am I happiest? And I realized it's this incredibly specific feeling. And that is being in physical motion and engaging with interesting people about interesting ideas. That's what I love. And so I am happiest when I'm like bouncing around town, going from thing to thing, meeting interesting people. I'm happiest when I'm hired to give a keynote and I'm traveling across the country while also talking to a founder that I advise and co-founders of a community for CPG founders that I have. Like, I like being in motion and I like engaging. And I realized that everything that I do is towards that. And that's really useful to realize, because if you can recognize what your state of being is, then actually the pressure of the individual projects or things that you choose gets pulled off of them in a way, and instead you just see them as a means to a continual end, and that continual end is your own life. Uh and so that's why I do this, I think, is because I don't like being in one place and I don't like focusing on one thing. I like the state of being in motion and being surrounded by interesting people.
So, how do you know when to implement the power of saying no instead of yes? Is that just a gut instinct?
When I started switching jobs, going from the newspaper job to the newspaper job to the magazine job to the magazine job, I started asking myself this question, which was, what am I here to learn, and have I learned it? And as soon as I knew that I had learned the thing that I came to learn, then it was time to leave. That's how I left every job. I mean, I was at Men's Health for 2 years, and I walked out of there to go to Fast Company. You cannot negotiate with me. I'm not interested in more money. I came here to learn the thing that I wanted to learn, and now it's time to go and to learn the next thing.
I think the constant recalibration is challenging. I mean, I'm not very good at it. I'll just take on the next thing, the next thing. I'm a lot like you in that I'm love to be in motion. I get excited by new things, new ideas, new projects. That's why I love pitching, for
Mm-hmm.
example. But that sometimes takes a toll on things that you've been doing for a while that are still there.
Yeah.
And that's I have to do a better job of kind of recalibrating that constantly.
I have a friend, her name is Catherine Morgan Schaffler. She wrote a book called The Perfectionist's Guide to Losing Control. She's a psychotherapist. And we were talking about what it means to redefine productivity, because Catherine argues that we think of productivity generally as fitting the most tasks into the time available. But the problem, she said, is that if that's how you think of productivity, then you will run out of energy to do those tasks. And so instead, we need to think of productivity as anything that restores your energy to do the tasks. And once you think of it that way, then taking a walk with a friend is productive. Taking a nap can be productive. Going and having an interesting adventure can be productive. And I really love that. But I said to Catherine, I said, that's really interesting. But what would you say to someone who has 16 hours worth of things to do today and only 8 to 10 hours to do them? At that point, do they have time for the productive nap or the productive walk with the friend? And she said, I would ask them this: what's the point of building something if you can't maintain it?
Mm,
And that question has like lodged in
that
my
is
soul.
amazing.
Yeah.
so
It's a
so
great,
profound.
yes, it's a
Yeah.
great question. She just drops profound things like that all the time. That's why I love talking to her. And so I think about that a lot. Like, what's the point of building something if you can't maintain it? And that honestly is what drives me to recalibrate.
Your work emphasizes seeing change not as a threat, but a way for growth. When you coach people or you are doing a keynote, what's a common misconception groups have about change and how to reframe change?
Well, the most common is that people equate change with loss. I mean, that's what we do. Our brains are programmed for this. So it's not our fault. It's just how we think. decades of psychological research have confirmed what's called loss aversion theory. Loss aversion theory holds that we protect against loss more than we seek gain. There are all sorts of really fascinating studies to confirm this. And so we have to understand what is going through our heads when something changes. And the answer is usually this: we think about the comfortable, familiar thing that we have and how we're going to lose access to it. And then, because we want to know what's going to come next, we extrapolate that loss. We say, because I'm going to lose this, I'm going to lose that, because I'm going to lose that, I'm going to lose that other thing. And suddenly it feels like everything is falling around us. And that feels like panic. And so the first thing that I always want to help people do is to recognize that change doesn't necessarily equal loss, and that in fact, there are lots of things about us that transfer through the change, that you are still valuable in lots of ways, even when everything feels like it has changed around you. And a way that I like to get people there is to push people to come up with a very specific kind of mission statement for themselves, a personal mission statement, in which, and I challenge you to do this now, Jason, let's see where you get to, where the idea is it's a short sentence that starts with I, and then every word is carefully selected because it is not anchored to something that's easily changeable. So, for example, I am a magazine editor is a deeply changeable sentence because all it takes is the president of Entrepreneur Media, whose name is Bill Shaw, to send me a Slack, like while we're talking right now, saying your work here is done. And then I am not a magazine editor. So that's a pretty terrible way to orient my identity. And this is the mistake that we make, which is that we tend to orient our identities around our tasks or our roles, but our tasks and our roles are deeply changeable. So instead, how do we orient our identities around our transferable value? That's the purpose for the exercise. So instead of I am a magazine editor, here is how I think of myself. I tell stories in my own voice. That's me. That's what I do. And the great shift that I came to at a stage of my career was to realize that I tell stories wasn't just something that could take place in magazines, but it could take place in other forms of media, books and podcasts and newsletters and so on, but also that it could take place in business settings. So when I am and on somebody's advisory board and they call me up because they have a challenge, the first thing that I am able to do is match their challenge to a story of somebody else who I talked to who went through a similar challenge and who resolved it. And in telling that story and drawing a line between what that person figured out and what this new person is trying to figure out, I am helpful. So that to me liberated me from any change. I understand that no matter what, when change comes, I still have transferable value. And that means that any new change is simply an opportunity to do the thing that I already do best. And that's the reason to do something like this. So I put it to you.
I would say that help I help companies find and tell their stories in ownable ways.
I think that's great.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Is
I
that
think that's great.
transferable?
Yes, it's very transferable. Well, so one of the measures that I have for whether or not you've come up with a good mission statement is this something that's always needed? Right? Like no matter what changes, is this something that's always needed? And the answer is yes. There will always be companies and they will always need to tell their story, and that story should be ownable. And so what you are liberating yourself from by
Is where I
extracting
tell it, who I tell
is
it for. Yeah.
exactly.
It's not anchoring it to what I'm doing at the moment.
Exactly.
It's
Which
very
is
powerful.
which is the really most important thing. Like to recognize that you don't do that in one specific medium, but you just do that means that if other mediums go away, your value doesn't go away
I
because
love that.
you are the thing that's transferable.
I feel like we just had a coaching session I didn't have to pay for.
Well, I'll send you the bill after.
Okay, good. In your book, Build for Tomorrow, you again, reinterpret stories, kind of what you said you're good at, from innovators. Tell me a little bit about that book and what makes that book unique and why people should read it.
The first revelation that I had at, as the editor in chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, as I was thinking about how could I build a platform off of this, how could I be something bigger, was I realized that if you listen to the questions that people ask you, you realize that what they're really doing is telling you what they think your value is to them.
That's interesting.
Isn't it? Like, but it's true.
Is that almost always the case?
I think so. It's been the case for me because I mean, think let me tell you the example and then like unpack it for yourself and see if it holds true. The example for me was that I realized that people were asking me over and over again, like when I was on podcasts or if I was at an event. And this is before I had really built out a personal brand. I didn't have this thing that you introduced me as, like Jason, the guy with change. Like I didn't have any of that. I was just the guy running entrepreneur. And they would ask me, what are the common features of successful people? That's what they were asking me over and over again, some version of that. You meet all these entrepreneurs, what makes them successful? And I realized that what they were really saying to me was, I think that your value, Jason Feifer, your value is that you get to see patterns across people. That's your value because you get to interact with more people than the average entrepreneur does. So I get to see lots of people and therefore I get to identify patterns. That to me was the value. I was the guy standing in the middle. And so I thought, well, okay, if I had a good answer to that question, then I could really run with it. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about it and talking to people. And the conclusion that I came to was that the thing that was common among all successful people that I met was that they were adaptable. And then the question became, well, okay, how? How are they adaptable? What are they doing? And I came to this philosophy, which I haven't actually articulated yet here on the show, which is that I think that the most successful people have built a unique personal relationship with change. They are understanding who they are in times of change, which is where that exercise that I just shared a moment ago comes out of. It's like that observation. And so once I had that, then the question was, what do I do with that? And I had been kicking this idea around for a while and I'd been writing about it a little bit. And then COVID happened. And then my friend Matt LeBlanc, who is a book agent, called me and he's like, hey, everyone's going through a lot of change right now. Like they're all going through change and it's actually the same change, but they're all doing totally different things with it. Uh, Now's the time to write a book about change. And I said, holy crap, you're right. And Matt's a smart guy. He's also Matthew McConaughey's book agent. And so I started writing this book and it came out in September of 2022. So people were sort of just like, still reorienting post COVID. And I, I, I hope that what I bring to it with the book and now everything else that I do, which is sort of, all post book stuff, but I, travel around and keynote a lot at corporate events. What I hope that I do is essentially offer that same core value prop that I think people recognized in me at the very beginning, which is I get to see infinite varieties of how people navigate complex situations and change. And I can tell you, hopefully better than most, what the patterns of successful navigation are. And again, it all comes out of leaning into what I perceived as the core thing that people were already recognizing about me, which I don't know. I haven't thought about this before, but seeing as I'm talking to a legend in advertising, shall we say,
Oh, wow. Stop that.
it is like a core thing of advertising too, right? Like how do you connect with a consumer? You connect with a consumer by answering a question that they're already asking, right? Like you don't you do best by identifying the pain points that they're already feeling and solving the problems that they're already thinking about. And so I want to take to market leaning on the strengths that people are already perceiving in me. And that's where the book comes from. And that's where kind of all this work comes from.
Whew. That's very powerful. And so, how do you differentiate between a fleeting trend or a fundamental shift or change and something that does not necessitate reinvention? In other words, change is constant. You've written books about it. You talk about how you need to embrace it, and the best people in the world embrace change, and that's why they're successful. How do you know when a change is an actual change or when it's a trend or something you don't need to pay attention to?
That's a really interesting question, and I'd love your answer on it.
I mean,
Is that
I can give you an example.
Yeah, give me an example. Give me an
Like
example.
every brand was buying space in the metaverse for a
Right.
minute, and they were let's launch our NFT,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the next thing was here, and we had to jump on it and be part of it.
And I remember that. And I remember hearing about all the money that brands were spending on the metaverse and thinking, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
I
that
know.
doesn't make any sense. And here's where I think all those brands went wrong. And I think this is the seed of the answer here. Where all those brands went wrong is that I bet that all the people who approved all of that budget also didn't understand why anybody would be in the metaverse.
Hmm.
And that's because nobody wanted to be in the metaverse. Things that last are things that solve old problems, not new problems, old problems in realistic ways. Like I don't think that we as human beings actually fundamentally change all that much across time. We basically want the same things, and the tools and resources that we gravitate to are fulfilling us in roughly the same ways over and over and over again. And when I think about AI, for example, what I really think about is that it's solving a whole bunch of really old problems. It's solving problems of things taking a lot of time, therefore people feeling overwhelmed, therefore people always looking for some way to just remove some kind of worry from themselves and to free up some kind of mental bandwidth. That's something people always want. If you give people an easier way to do something, they will take it. They're happy for it. But the metaverse didn't really solve a problem. It just introduced it introduced friction, and it proposed a lesser way of doing something that people already have solutions for, which is to connect in lots of different ways. Um, and there's a flip side to this, which is in the content world that I come from, people make things, magazines that I've worked for my entire career, make things with no consideration about whether anyone actually wants to consume this, right? We make things because we want to make them. And then we just assume that somebody will consume this. And this comes up a lot actually at Entrepreneur when, for example, I'm having a brainstorming session with the sales team because we've got an RFP from some brand, and we are trying to come up with some program that is going to fulfill all the stuff that some brand is asking for. And somebody in sales will say, well, why don't we create a video series about blah, 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 blah. And my answer is always, would you watch that video series? No, you wouldn't? Then why would anybody else? Why would they? Just because you make something doesn't mean people will consume it. It is just applying our own basic needs and humanity to the thing that we're working on, and then respecting that the audience that we're trying to reach are just as human as we are. And if we aren't interested in something because it doesn't fulfill our human needs, then it's not going to fulfill their human needs either. And if you use that as a filter, then I think you will pretty easily see when something is wishful thinking, which I think is what the metaverse was. It was like a gold rush of wishful thinking because, oh my gosh, it's this new thing and we can own it. Yeah, but nobody wants it. So who cares? Versus something that people actually do want because you want it yourself and therefore it's worth investing in.
It's a very good filter. It's very clear. All right. We're close to time here, so I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions and then we'll wrap it up. What's a piece of advice you would give maybe someone out there that's struggling in their career and they want to prepare for the future?
The piece of advice that I would give you is to never, ever think that you can only do the thing that you're already doing. I know that sounds obvious, but you will catch yourself doing that. And I have so many friends in journalism, for example, who are apoplectic about the decline of this industry because they keep saying that this is the only thing that they know how to do. And I keep telling them that is incorrect. You know how to do so much more than that. So push yourself to think about how your skills can apply in infinite ways instead of trapping yourself in how you think your skills are limited.
Final question. Do you have a mantra or a quote that you always come back to or that you live by?
Yeah, I have a few. When I was a kid and trying to build my career in those early days that we talked about at the beginning of the show here, there's this thing that I kept telling myself. I literally would look in the mirror, Stuart Smalley style, and I would say this, and it was this: I'm not fucking around. That's what I would tell myself. I'm not fucking around. I'm not fucking around. Monday, I'm not fucking around. Tuesday, I'm not fucking around. Like, I wasn't fucking around. I had a goal and I wanted to get there. Now, the thing that has been most meaningful to me that somebody has said to me that I think about a lot and repeat a lot, or I'll give you two of them actually. Obnoxious name dropping here, but I get to meet interesting people through Entrepreneur. Number one is Ryan Reynolds, who told me to be good at something, you have to be willing to be bad. And I remind myself of that every time I take on something new. And I'm disappointed that I'm not good enough at it yet. To be good at something, you have to be willing to be bad. I think that's really great. And then Malcolm Gladwell said to me, self-conceptions are powerfully limiting, meaning that if you have too narrow a definition of what you are, then you will turn down all of the incredible opportunities along the way that don't match that narrow definition. And that is something I also think about a lot.
Well, you are, I can attest that you deliver on the thing that you love the most, which is your awesome and personal connection. And I think staying in touch with people and networking. What is the best way for a individual or a brand or someone to find you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, you can just get in touch through my website, which is jasonfeifer.com, or LinkedIn, where I am on far too much. If you send me a message, I will definitely see it. The one other thing you could do is if you go to my newsletter, it is called One Thing Better. Each week, one way to be more successful, satisfied, and build a career or company that you love. It's got 70,000 subscribers who each week get my kind of the kinds of things that we talked about on this show that are really geared towards improving life and work.
It's one thing better every week.
It's one thing better every week. That's what I promise. That's what I deliver. And it is onethingbetter.email is the web address. So plug that into a browser, onethingbetter.email. And if you ever want to get in touch, just hit reply to any of those emails. It goes to my inbox. I look at everything.
Amazing. Thank you for your time. Very generous and your great insight. This is a great recording and we really appreciate it.
Hey man, I really appreciate it. I've listened to many, many episodes of this show, so it's really fun to be on it.
Soul and Science is a Mechanism podcast produced by Maggie Bowles, Ryan Tillotson, and Lily Jablonski. The show is edited by Daniel Ferreira with theme music by Kyle Merritt. And I'm your host, Jason Harris.